Hello, we're going to be doing an OWR solder connection. Got the connector here. It's got its full length of wiring on it, and I want to show you how we're going to trim it up, tin the wires, and get it ready for connecting to the OWR can. I'm using a chisel tip soldering iron. I run it at 760 degrees Fahrenheit. Should be temperature controlled. We're going to be using some liquid flux and some Kester rosin core solder for doing this. I'm going to use a thermal stripper because the wiring that we're using is Teflon coated, and if you try to mechanically strip it with a razor blade, you can nick the fine wires in the wire. So I use the thermal stripper. You can cut it with a razor blade, but you got to be really careful when you do it and take your time. I'm going to use some Kynar when we do the splicing, and that will be in the next video when we get to that point. We've got a couple of pieces. These are 10 millimeter long. So let's get started. For this demonstration, I'm going to cut this wire off to, let's go with 4.5 inches. There are 3 pairs of wires that will have to be tied together, and they are the violet, the orange, and the gray. So with these, I'm going to trim the insulation off at 10 millimeters using the thermal stripper. And I'm not measuring these, I'm just estimating. I've done it so many times that I'm pretty close to the 10 millimeter length. There's the 2 gray. There's the 2 orange. And there's the 2 violet. And I just grab the 2 leads, bring them together, so they form a little X, kind of hold them right there like that, and then I just twist them together. You do the orange pair. And the gray. Pull them so they're nice and straight, and they're ready to be tinned. I've got just a little block here that I sit on the bench and coat them good with some rosin. Grab some solder here that's in a little tub. Put it in a little pill bottle to make it easy to work with. I'm going to I cleaned the iron tip, and then I put some solder on it, and now the wire's got some good flux on it, and I'll just draw that wire through the solder on the iron. There's the violet one done. Let's do the orange. Give it a little bit of flux. Clean the iron tip. Put some solder on that tip. Heat the wire up good. Draw it through that solder bead. That one's tinned. And then finally we'll do the gray. Make sure it's twisted up good here. Alright. Clean that iron tip. Flux on the wire. Drag it through the little solder bead on the iron. And those three are done. And we're going to take the remaining wires and strip those back approximately 6.5 millimeters. Alright, that's stripped back, and I want to look at these, make sure I've trimmed and got a nice good square butt here and there isn't any shreds of Teflon insulation sticking out. And now I'm going to tin each one of these, put a little flux on it, clean my iron, get a good bead of clean solder, heat it up and drag it through that, and there's a nice tin connection. Just keep going right through. Look at them as you go in here and see if the insulation looks good. If you've nicked a wire, you're going to have to cut it off, because you know, and I could do this, or you could just cut this off, re-tin it, and then make sure the strands aren't broken and look at it good. The insulation is nice square at the cut. Put some flux on there. I'd like to see that a little bit nicer than that. It looks like one big blob of solder. I like to see the strands in it when I tin them. So leave the heat on there good. And that looks much better to me. I don't know if you can see that on the video. But I want the strands to show through that solder so I know I've got good fill. Now if you don't have a block to put the solder on, this is a little Teflon plastic block. You can just put a bead of flux on the wire. Clean your iron, get some solder on it, and bring it right into the flux. Drag that wire through the solder ball on your iron, and you've got it clean. And you can see that the flux is dried on that wire. Don't worry about that, it's okay. And as you drag your wire through the solder, if you get a little ball of solder on the end, or a little tip of solder, don't worry about it, because we're going to trim these leads off, and anything that's out here on the end is going to disappear anyway, so don't worry about a little excess solder on the very end. got our leads all cut to what we want for our initial length, and they're all tinned and they look good. So now I want to cut them to length. It's going to be that final length prior to them being spliced. And I look to do about 2.3 to 2.5 millimeters, what I'm looking for. And you can measure it if you want to, but I've done this many times that I'm just going to eyeball it. And these are the double-stranded ones. And this one, I've got some insulation flash, so I'm going to grab a razor blade. And I just want to make sure that I've got a nice square cut to it. See that flash that's on there? Trim that up a little bit so we got a good clean. Alright, so now we've got our OWR connector with our leads properly tinned, and we'll end this video right here. Get ready for the next step.